Okay, this video is kind of a surprise video because I didn't expect to be able to do this. It is a long sleeve shirt. Well, it's a long sleeve bishop shirt, like button down shirt, a lot like this one. However, I ended up getting this fabric for like $7, which is, if you've ever bought a $7 shirt, you don't expect it to look nice. But I got this fabric for $7. I already had the interfacing and the buttons to do it. So this shirt cost $7. And I'm using this pattern. It's my favorite long sleeve shirt pattern. It's 8447 through Simplicity, and they are still producing this. It is just a basic long sleeve shirt pattern, but I thoroughly enjoy it. I wish I'd lengthened these sleeves on this one because this is a lovely warm shirt, but I didn't, and that's how I figured out I have long arms and I need to lengthen all my sleeves like 2 inches to make sure they fit. But this fabric is a discontinued fabric. I ended up getting a yard, and then I had like almost a yard as remnants, so I had just enough fabric to do this shirt. It is a black and green and white check pattern. You'll see it at the end of the video, but I love this shirt. It is a super soft cotton. It didn't pill when I washed it. I wish I could find more of this fabric. So I hope you enjoy watching it. I'll see you at the end of the video.
So I have found with this pattern that I need to cut the sleeves about 1.5 to 2 inches longer, simply because I have long arms. If I don't do this, then the sleeve turns out to be not a bishop sleeve, but a gathered shirt that looks wrong. So if I add this 1.5 to 2 inches, then I get a nice bishop sleeve that has a little bit of drape to it, that has a little bit of gathering at the cuff, that fits really well. Even if I make it a little bit too long, it still looks a lot better than if I didn't gather it at all. Basically what I'm doing is my version of slash and spread. I need this length for my arms, so that's what I do. So yes, I believe this is the last piece of the pattern that I needed to cut. So here I am marking out the front tuck. Right around the waist there is button tuck on each side, and then on the back there is a pleat that runs down the center that is quite deep, that I find rather enjoyable to wear. And then there's a tuck on either side. And how I'm using my pin method to do this, though you can't really see that at the moment. But how I do that is I put a pin through the circle marked on the pattern, and then I mark the pattern. With the tucks that I'm doing, I'm just folding the pattern back and drawing a line straight across. It makes it, for me, easier to know exactly where I need to mark, where I need to pin, and where I need to sew. So what I do is once I've got that straight line, I take a pin, insert it through the fabric to the other line, and then make sure that I line the pin up to go through the lines on both sides. That way I know that the tuck will be in the right spot and will look right. I do love this fabric and I wish I could find more of it. However, it was an end of bolt at Joann's from last year. Whoops, just flipped the pattern off the table. But yes, it was an end of stock from last year, and I got 2 yards for $5. So I am very lucky that I found this fabric when I did, and I really love how this shirt ends up coming out. So yes, a lot of this shirt is about the prep work. You got to make sure you mark the well, on this one it doesn't have any darts. You've got to make sure you mark the tucks and the pleats right, otherwise it'll turn out funky. Especially when you're doing a plaid like this, if you get one slightly off, then the plaid will become crooked and it'll be obvious that you didn't do it right. So yes. Here I'm just using a pin to mark the fold point because this pattern has a overextended interface, meaning half an inch of the interface, well, approximately an inch of the interface will be the fold, which I like because it gives a nice clean finish, nice clean edge to the front because it will always stay folded. Some people may not like it, but I do. It makes it easier for me to keep that nice crease in the front. So here I'm just double checking everything lines up. I'm again using a pin to mark the center front. It just makes it easier for me in the long run. I have found that when I sew, if I do all the prep work first, if I make sure everything's marked, if I make sure everything's pinned right, if I make sure everything is together and ready, that everything will go a lot smoother in the long run. And considering I made this shirt in about 12 hours after I cut it out the night before, I think it turned out pretty good. But here I am just getting ready to do the same with the back to, again, mark my points, mark my pleats, mark my tuck, and just to have everything ready to go for when I pull out the sewing machine so it'll all line up right. For this one, I am using my red chalk pencil. It tends to not wash out, but if you're only marking the inside of the fabric, it works. So yes, once I've got all of that marked, I will put the gathering stitches in the back. I will sew down the pleat in the back, and I will make sure everything lines up right. So here I am just stay stitching around the collar. This helps to keep it from fraying out before you have a chance to actually sew it, because when you're handling a fabric, especially something lighter weight or a looser weave, it will fray on you. That's just how it is. So generally they recommend stay stitching it. You can always remove the stitching later. Usually I'll leave it in the collar though, simply to give it a little bit of a fray check. No, not the glue stuff, but it helps keep the material from fraying past that point. It's the same concept that if you pink your seams, you've got to have a second line of stitching away from the main stitching. Otherwise, it won't matter that you pink the edge. It'll still go furry past the point that you want it to, and then it'll come undone, and then you will have no seam allowance, and then the shirt will be too small if you try to fix it, and it's just a whole lot of hoopla to try and deal with. So pick your seam finishes. You could do what I do, which is do a line of stitching 1/4 of an inch away from my actual line of seaming, and then I pink the edges, or you could do a French seam, or you could do any number of methods, but pick your method and use it. So here I am getting ready to gather up the shoulder seam of the blouse. And how I do this is I sew a line of gathering stitches about 1/2 inch away from the edge, and then I do another one about 1/2 inch away from that line of stitching, so that I'll be sewing down the middle of it. And then I'll pin one edge, and then I'll pin the other edge, and then I'll gather it to fit. And then I'll basically pin it into place. I'll try to make sure all the gathering's going the same way and that it all falls nicely, but that's that. And now here I am doing the collar. So this is just 2 pieces of fabric. One has interfacing fused to it, the other does not, and it's just sewn on 3 sides, flipped inside out, then corners turned out, and then basted across the bottom. You can do some top stitching around the edge. I think I did it in this shirt, but I'm not sure, and that helps keep the seam allowance and the corners nicely turned out. It just depends on the type of color you're doing. I find that when I'm doing these pointed style collars, having a line of stitching along that edge makes it look a little more crisp and finished, and I have to worry about ironing it less. Yes, I know, ironing, the bane of all existence. Here I am trying to cut off the excess because I tried to give myself room when I was cutting, because I wasn't sure how much this fabric would move. So I'm also trying not to cut over the pins because I don't want to have to replace my scissors, because I would cut the pin and then it would not look all that nice. So here I am moving all the pins because I've already sewn it, and I'm getting ready to turn out the collar. But first I've got to notch that edge, which is you take approximately a 45-degree angle out of the corner, and then what I do is I graduate the corner, which, well, that's what I call it. But basically you turn your scissors a little bit and you give it a chance to actually get to the corner, instead of all the fabric bunching up and then you not being able to get that nice point. It gives you a nice point and it works. I just use an old pair of hemostats to turn out the corner. You can use a knitting needle. They do have turner outers in stores. I know Joann's has some on sale online. And then what I do is I just get it as tightly as I can out, and then I pin it. You can use an iron. I don't, because I never think of it at that moment. Yes, you can see that I did do top stitching on that seam allowance to make sure it stays in place relatively, and so that it looks somewhat nice. I am just using a black cotton thread I found that it looks really nice and it holds up really well. You may have your own preference on thread and what type of thread you use. But yes, I'm just going over this twice because I want to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. There's nothing worse than getting all the way through and then having your collar popped off. Not that I'm speaking from experience, but that's neither here nor there. all, all, all people who do some kind of craft have the horror story of getting all the way through the project, and because you forgot to do one thing, it all comes unraveled. It's usually our first couple projects, but that's what that is all about. So here I do believe that I am getting ready to pin down the, not just the back facing, but also the front self facing of the blouse. Sorry, I don't have a better angle. I think at this point I was just going, I want to see if I can get this done in a day. And I did. But I need to pay attention to the camera angles a little bit better. I will say that once you find a pattern that looks good on you and that feels good when you're wearing it, don't let go of that pattern. If you have to, if your pattern starts getting ratty, get some old wrapping paper that you're pretty sure you're not going to use, copy that pattern down. You will use patterns to death. When you find the ones you love, you will use them to death. I will probably have to copy this shirt pattern down here soon because I love this pattern and I want to save this pattern and I want this pattern to be around with me for a while. So here I am pulling the pins out of the facing. I am notching that front corner and making sure to tie off that end because I don't want this coming undone. And there I'm cutting off the excess thread. It will end up going in the trash. And I am notching around the neck. Doing this allows me to lay that facing down as flat as I can and allows me to have a good edge there, making sure everything lays down flat. And I will understitch, which is sewing the facing down to the seam allowance but not to the outside. So you won't be able to see this line of stitching from the outside of the fabric. However, it does allow you to get a cleaner line and make sure that it doesn't go everywhere. Now I am sewing up the side seams, and as you can see, I've already got a line of stitching there. And that allows me to pink the edge. It also keeps me from having to worry about that fraying out before I get a chance to sew it. Some people serge the edges, and I'm coming to the conclusion that if I ever got a serger, I would probably do that, but I have this method for now that allows me to do this, and it works for me. So I'm not too worried about that. So here I am getting ready to sew up the seam for the sleeve, and I've already marked where I need to leave the opening for the cuff and the buttons, which is what I pointed out earlier. So I just match that point and then match the end and pin. And then I will just go along the edge there and make sure everything lays flat and matches up, as you can see. And then I will pin all the way down and make sure to match up where I can and to get it all to lay as flat as I can. So when I sew down that line, I will do a back stitch and a forward stitch again at the double pins, and then I will pink, and then I'll turn out, and then I will turn the sleeve inside out, and then I will attach it to the arm side. And when I do the sewing to attach it to the arm side, I will then do another line of stitching about a 1/4 inch away, and then I will clip with pinking shears or regular shears depending on the material as close to that line of stitching as I can without, slicing through it. But this will allow me to have a nicely finished seam. I will then take a hot iron and iron that seam allowance into the sleeve hole, and then I will try to let it sit for a couple minutes so that the fabric will remember that position and will want to go into that position. So here I am getting ready to do the hem. I've sewn 1/8 of an inch away from the bottom all the way around, keeping the facing the wrong way around so that I can turn it out and it'll give me a nice front edge. This also, the reason I do it all the way around is so that I have a nice line to steam down, so that I have a nice line to sew. Like I said, I turn out that corner and then I will immediately pin it because that'll allow me to have a nice edge to do. So here I am doing the front buttonholes, and here's the end product. I am rather pleased with this shirt. I think it looks rather nice on me. It is very vintage feeling. I love it. I hope you enjoyed the process, and thank you for watching. Bye.